Hello and welcome one more time to the next episode, which I lost track of I don't know what I'm doing with friends. And I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I lost track of the number of episodes. Today we have an excellent conversation lined up. With me today is Ray Gerber. Don't look at the name that says Raymond. He's Ray. We all know him as Ray. It's a lot cooler that way. And Ray is the CPO, CTO. I'll let him introduce himself. But Ray is with Thunderhead, which is one of the absolute best products that I've seen in the last couple of decades come out of just startups. I met him a while ago. I worked with them before SAP. They're a partner here for us. They're an invaluable partner, and we have a lot of fun that we're planning to do together. But Ray, why don't you introduce yourself? Woo, let's try that again. Ray, introduce yourself, please.
I don't think I can sound as exciting as you are, Esteban, but my name is Raymond Gerber. I am speaking to you with a very Southern accent, which is South African, which has been Americanized a little bit. And I'm the Chief Product Officer for Thunderhead. I've been here for 10 years and have an interesting history coming from the enterprise resource planning space, transitioning into CRM, and then obviously transition into customer engagement. And my path took me as the Chief Technology Officer for Cordiant that was acquired by Pegasystems. I was there for a year as the VP of Customer Experience. And then Glenn Manchester hired me as the CTO at Thunderhead, and I eventually transitioned into the Chief Product Officer role. So I'm responsible for strategy and innovation at Thunderhead. Thank you, Esteban, for the opportunity to chat to you.
No worries. My pleasure. This is going to be fun because what Ray humbly didn't tell you is that he's been doing this journey stuff before it was called journey stuff. And he's been working, on categorization, AI, and stuff that you actually should starting to think about before most of you were even born. Well, you're not that old, but before I was. No, wait. I don't know. Let me rephrase that. But anyways, this is going to be fun. I want to talk to you about a little bit about an article that you guys published, and that will be in the link below a few weeks ago, which is how we started this. And I think the article was talking about customer intelligence or relationship intelligence or journey intelligence, right? What was that? What was the name?
Yeah, it was trying to position, customer intelligence as brands know it today, and the need to transition to customer journey intelligence. That was the main mantra of the article that we wrote. And it's been very well received and shared many times, and I'm glad you picked it up, and I'm sure you found it insightful too.
So what is customer journey intelligence? I heard many terms lately, right? Journey analytics, journey intelligence, customer intelligence. What is it that we're talking about?
I think the best way to describe it is by comparing customer intelligence to customer journey intelligence. And we've seen with the pandemic that the ability to understand customers' behavioral change that's so dynamically and quickly changed over time becomes a fundamental need for a brand to understand their customers' intent. And when you look at traditional customer intelligence, it is focused on your demographics and psychographic data that very, very slowly move. And when there was behavioral aspects in that, it was what I call moment-based analytics, where customer journey intelligence takes all the attributes of the customers, demographics, psychographics, and supplements it with behaviors, but those behaviors are viewed through the lens of a journey, so you can see behavior over time. And as part of that, removing the importance of channel and touch point and replacing that with the concept of interaction context, so you can understand why the customer is here versus where they are.
So it's a couple of things I want to touch upon, right? You're talking about interaction context, and to me, context is one of the three key pillars of any understanding of the customer, right? You have content of what they want, context where they are, and then intent, which is why they actually want it, right? And one of the things about Thunderhead that I appreciate is like how, without saying it, so you do a good job of actually, I don't know, I don't want to say guessing, but making it more clear what's the actual intent of the customer. Right?
Exactly.
It's not just the context, but the intent that makes a difference in what you do, right?
Yeah, and I think obviously, you mentioned AI and ML earlier. Without the maturation of AI and ML capabilities and accessibility to it, it was impossible to do that. You could put people on a journey, but how do you appropriately understand what that journey is leading them towards in terms of their desired outcomes. And I think that is one of the key things that we bring through customer journey intelligence, is the ability to take those seeming interactions from all channels and touch points, or now interaction context, and merging them and view them through the journey so we can understand the starting behavior, how they progressed, and try and associate them to cohorts and identify how those cohorts then eventually achieve their outcomes. That starts giving you a lot more precise understanding in terms of this customer's intent. But the key thing is you need to continually be aware of a change in intent. That one specific interaction, if a customer is in the sales journey and he suddenly opens a support ticket, you have to be able to understand the impact of this cross journey on the intent of the customer.
Man, every time you say something, I have like 17 questions to follow up. So I'm
That's
gonna
good.
try
That's
to
good.
stay. I'm a tangential person, but I'm gonna try to stay organized here. So you know, cross intent. Wait, the three things I'm gonna touch on from what you just said: cross intent, right? Number one. Number two, you put a customer in a journey, and then number three, the part that is like the most interesting part is like the true these cohorts, right? How big are these cohorts? How big are these groups that you categorize customers into?
Well, the nice thing about traditional cohorts analysis, again, it's just based on demographics and psychographics. It's based on your age, based on your race, based on
Yeah.
sexual orientation. Where when you get into customer journey intelligence, because we have behaviors over time, that gives you the ability to slice your cohorts into a lot smaller groupings.
Right.
So we have this concept of a most common journey algorithm, or a most common approximate path algorithm, that takes behaviors of millions of customers and breaks it down into 50, 60, 70 different cohorts based on the behaviors of customers over time. So the nice thing is that allows us to move brands from segments that contain 10,000 target customers to 1,000 customers, to 500 customers, to 100 customers, and eventually to what I call micro cohorts or micro audiences, because you have so much more detail that you use as input to the algorithm versus just a set of slow moving attributes. People don't move that often, they age once a year, etc.
So you start with psychographics and demographics, right? Like you're 19 and your propensity to buy is like within 3 days of finding something in psychographic part or something like that, and then puts in 10,000 people. Then you start looking at the behaviors and you said, oh, 600 of you go here, and then 3,000 of you go there, and then you do here, and then from that you actually start whittling down to you get to like those micro cohorts, right?
Well described. We actually do more than that. We allow you to choose where to start. You can either start with the psychographic and demographics, and then within the context of those cohorts, you can identify behavioral cohorts, or you start with behavioral cohorts, and within the context of the behavioral cohorts, understand if there are psychographic and demographic sub-cohorts in the context of that most common behavior.
So going back to a topic that I queued up before, put the customer in an experience. It's been said by certain people in the industry that customers choose their own experiences versus us putting them on an experience, right? So
yeah, maybe I used the wrong wording. You picked up well on it.
No. It's totally
you
fine.
don't. We don't necessarily put a customer on a journey. It's you're right.
Okay.
It's the wrong wording to use. We associate a customer's behavior to a known journey. Okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't.
No. I understand you're not putting me down, but I wanted to make sure if I use the wrong wording, that's why you're here, to make sure the audience understands what we actually mean. So yeah, we actually, as the interactions occur, and that's the nice thing about our platform, is we do with every interaction, we kind of redecision and redetermine what journey this customer is on, where they are in the journey, and then with every interaction, we recalculate possible intent.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. It's like, I mean, we don't place them in journeys, but we create. I don't want to say the path, but the interactions, right? Is what I call them. I mean, the company creates interactions, and then how do you actually do the jumping? Because this is the part that is the most interesting. That it becomes like the black box, the magic of what you do, right? I mean, you have somebody going down a certain path. but then all of a sudden you jump 3 steps ahead or 2 steps back or to a complete different experience or journey or something like that. How do you actually do that part? What's involved in the complex calculation?
Yeah, I mean, we have a complex set of algorithms that we put under the cover of what we call autonomous orchestration. Okay, and as I said, so the first thing we do is we take the population and put them into behavioral cohorts, so we can understand the groups of customers that behave similarly. And so when Esteban interacts, and Esteban is identified as being on journey A within life cycle stage C, and he now has had 3 dormant periods, which means he's not progressing along the journey. We look at other customers that have had that behavior similar to Esteban at this point, and then determine for those customers that eventually achieve their intended outcome in a frictionless manner, what was the next step within the journey that made them progress. And then we utilize that as the input to our next best action or next best conversation engine that will recommend to the visitor or to the customer or to Esteban the next piece of content that will actually help him progress in the journey.
So, and this is a fantastic point to go into another tangent. Thank you. Which is, predictive versus prescriptive, right? I mean, one path versus potentially 2 or more paths, and then the likelihood to go there. I mean, how do you solve this quandary of like, Esteban has chosen this, and then Esteban is going to take this next best action versus Esteban has chosen this, and there's like 3 potential next best actions, and then let's monitor all 3, and then try to track that at the same time. I mean, how do you handle that within the product?
Yeah, so we actually, combine predictive and prescriptive. We don't really separate the two because the prescription is associated based on the prediction. But also a key part of that is the underlying algorithm called reinforcement learning that continues to learn. I'm sure you understand the reinforcement learning algorithm, and it'll continue to test. If I'm recommending the next best conversation to a group of customers, what is the response? Are they achieving their outcomes? And maybe just on a side tangent is one of the key differences between ThunderEd's AI and ML approach is we don't learn necessarily based on the immediate response to a personalization. Okay, so a lot of brands have an next best action, and they say, okay, did the person have a positive, negative, and neutral response? And then they, in an adaptive way, therefore determine what are the demographics and psychographics associated with people to have positive and negative responses, and then the machine learning takes over from that point on. We merely focused on what is the eventual outcome associated by that personalization. So that's why, when we say, people say you don't do adaptive analytics, well, we don't do adaptive analytics because we can only adapt if we know if the behavior correlates to an eventual outcome. If I ask you for an email address today, most solutions will say, did he give you the email address? Therefore, it was success. If it didn't, it was a negative response. What we do is we ask for the email address. If the customer 2 days later on a different channel gives us an email address, we start associating the success of that event to the personalization that occurred as part of the journey orchestration.
But that's the way you're supposed to do it. Isn't that the way everybody does it?
Exactly. Unfortunately not. So
interesting concept. Look at that. Over time, the customer remains the same. That's amazing.
Because it's like because I think marketers or in customer experience owners or even like us as consumers, we want that immediate feedback. We want to understand, if I deliver that A/B test, I want to quickly know within an hour which is the best piece of content versus, well, you shouldn't really pick the best piece of content. You should pick the best piece of content based on the cohort that have positive or negative response, and the impact of that content on them achieving their eventual outcome, not just on that they click on it or they do not click on it.
So this is, it's almost like we set this up on purpose to promote what you do, but it's not. I promise it's not. I'm just interested in the concept of journey analytics, and we got 5 minutes. So tell me what happens after all this. We do all this stuff a few times, a few million times. Scalability really is irrelevant at this point, thanks to Amazon, Google, and everybody else who provides, big machines in the cloud, right? So Tell me what happens after all this is done. I mean, I go through it once, twice, maybe three times. You have some good info on me, profile and everything. You're an advocate, not you personally, but
Yeah.
the company that buys you is an advocate for cookies, so they have more information that they should, and they don't know what to do with it. So now you have this fascinating profile of what I do and everything. So what's next? What happens the next time that I join? I mean, am I still like an unknown cohort at first, and then I move down from there, or now that you have more information, you place me further down into like different experiences? So how does that work?
Well, I think that that's where you talked about earlier the concept of cross-journey insights, in terms of being able to understand if I'm in the use journey, on the use lifecycle stage, and I start having a lot of support tickets, being able to understand what my behaviors were within the sales journey. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did I skip the knowledge stage? How much time did I spend on specific topics? And so it's the ability to kind of take those individual learnings and start associating that to behavioral patterns that happen earlier in the life cycle, to start being proactive instead of identifying audiences or segments, that you want to proactively say, okay, so therefore, if Esteban has a lot of calls in the use stage because he has an issue with his iPhone or his Android phone, and I can correlate that to him, not spending enough time in the knowledge stage of the journey, what other customers like Esteban did not spend time in that knowledge journey, and can I proactively engage with those customers to provide them with the information that will make their experiences and their knowledge acquisition more frictionless, because I don't have to call to get the knowledge. I'm proactively identifying that there's a lot of support issues because people did not read the terms and conditions, or they did not read the onboarding instructions, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you get to the point is where the consumers start feeling this company is starting to get me and understand me and are proactively engaging with me to help me, not necessarily to sell to me.
So how does this get represented to the company, to the brand, right? I mean, they obviously are a smart company. They bought SAP and came with a partnership on Thunderhead, and now they have our award-winning CDP and your award-winning your relationship intelligence and customer intelligence and journey intelligence. But how does this get represented to the customer that gets all this stuff? I mean, sure, the journeys are smoother and you go in a better place, blah blah blah. But what do I get as a brand to know that it's working, that it's not, and what type of insights can I derive from all this stuff?
Well, firstly, obviously, we have a very powerful journey visualization, and we have a powerful query language that allows you to identify the context of the question you're trying to ask, or to the insights you're trying to gather. And really, at the end of the day, you coined, along with Phil, this concept of the value exchange when we did the original Engagement 3.0 white paper. Okay, so I think from the brand perspective, it is the ability to understand what is that perfect mix of value that I need to exchange with the consumer or with the customer in return for the exchange in terms of cost savings on my side, increase the customer lifetime value on my side. So it's the visualization, and we talk to that as the concept of conversation effectiveness or action effectiveness. And it shows, for example, a business user. We have a pretty interesting algorithm called most valuable orchestrations. It analyzes behaviors over time, and it looks at all the interjections that the brand did through personalization, through A/B tests, through campaigns, and identifies the most relevant mixture of personalization efforts across all channels that will achieve the outcome in a quicker way and a less frictionless way for the consumer, resulting in a quicker ROI to the brand, because people translate intent into action much quicker. They can do it more digitally contained because they don't have to have so much help by the sister channel, et cetera, et cetera. So I think overall, it is just that dashboarding that shows the brand actually the behavior over time. We have a customer called Cleveland Cavaliers. So when you buy 5 tickets over a period of 2 seasons, and when somebody has bought their first ticket, how many channels did they use? How many interactions did they have? When we now as a brand have introduced projects and initiatives to make those experiences fluent, how can I compare the behavior of the first journey, purchasing journey, to the second one, to the third one, to see visually if my initiatives are effective and appropriate to help improve customer experience, which drives satisfied customers, happy customers, and eventual, money in the pockets of the brand.
So I'm contractually obligated to finish this around 20 minutes, which means that we're coming out to the end of this. But man, that was a lot to unpack. Thank you. I
You're
would
welcome.
love for you to make a commitment to come back. I like the most available orchestration part. I would like to have a separate conversation about that. We'll follow up on that. But I do need to end this now so that people will actually watch it. Apparently, people lose their interest after 20 minutes. They tell me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm sorry if some of my responses was too technical, but that's just the space we live in. So
No. It's not. You were fine. Trust me. This is
thank you.
nowhere near the level that we can go into. But
Okay.
maybe the next one will make it like one of those with unplugged or whatever. Like not 20 minutes. Let's go as long as it takes, and let's get a whiteboard and lines
That'll
and
be fun.
symbolic language. Yeah.
That'll be fun, yes. Especially if we look at a specific algorithm, we can dive deep into and understand the value of how it works and the insights and intelligence it gives to brands. So
Anyways, Ray, thank you so very much.
thank you,
I
Esteban.
really
You have a nice
appreciate you being
day.
here.
Stay
And
safe.
this was another wonderful edition of I Don't Know What I'm Doing with Brains, the Homeless Esteban edition. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.